G'day Supercoachers and welcome back to the channel. This is episode 6 and in this video I'll be discussing the forward line this year. Now it's going to be a pretty in-depth video, but I'll try and make it as quick and direct as possible, but the reality is there's a lot to go through and there is several players that we need to look at here. Now I've put down these players in 3 separate categories. First category being the elite, players that I think will have 105 plus average by the end of the year. Then I've got the second tier, which is between 95 and 105 point average. And then I've got the next best, which is players that will average between 80 and 95 in my opinion. So first of all, we might as well start off with the elite. There are 3 people in this category. 1, Patrick Dangerfield. 2, Rowan Marshall. 3, Josh Dunkley. Not necessarily in that order, but they're the 3 that stand out to me when I look at the forwards this year. Now, if we look at Dangerfield, the plus to get in him is that he has massive scoring potential. He's a contested ball, he's a ball winner and a goal kicker. He has 6 consecutive seasons over 115 plus. But there is a little concern that over the past 2 years, he's only averaged 115 after coming off multiple seasons in a row averaging 125 plus. So he's heading down rather than up now. He was my first pick this year. However, over the past week, I read that he has had a delayed preseason and a recent hiccup. So that's made me reconsider whether I should spend the money on him or spend elsewhere. And for now, I believe he's underdone and he's a little overpriced. So it's a wait and see for me now. Bit of a backflip, I know, but I don't like picking players that don't have full pre-seasons. Player number 2 is Rowan Marshall. Now he's a big tick for me, probably the biggest tick in the forward line now. In 2019, he averaged 110. That's when he was playing as the lone ruck, and he had 14 out of 20 scores over 100. In 2020, he went backwards a little bit, but that's because of the addition of Paddy Ryder. So they were playing 2 rucks down there at the Saints, and he spent a lot of time forward. He does have the ability to hit the scoreboard, but I do like when teams play 1 ruckman only, and I believe that's what Marshall is good at, and that's where he plays his best football. He finished the season strongly, averaging 112.5 points over the final 10 rounds. Now, if you're averaging 104 as a forward, you're going to finish in the top 6 by season's end by average. He's a no-brainer for me. He'll be my first pick now. Let's just hope he spends more time in the ruck this year, because if he gets those minutes, we're likely to see another 110 average from Marshall this season. He also has forward ruck eligibility, so that makes him even more appealing. If you do get an injury in the ruck, you can trade that injured player out, swap Marshall in, and then bring in a forward. So it's a win-win for me. He has to be in everyone's team at the start of the season, or if not close to. And next up is Dunkley. Everyone's iffy on Dunkley at the moment, but he's a yes from me for now. So he's a proven scorer over the past 2 seasons, even when he doesn't get midfield minutes. We saw last year he played second ruck and through the forward line, and didn't play enough through the midfield like we thought he would, like he did in 2019, where he averaged a mammoth 117 or something like that. So he's a genuine inside mid with contested ball winning abilities, and he loves to tackle, so +4. That's what we're looking at here. And besides his 67 points in round 1 last year, his next lowest score was 87. So that's good consistency from Dunkley there. He's also known for posting massive scores. So if we look back to 2019, he had scores of 134, 136, 153, 169, 173, and he topped out at 202. Now, you're a buddy ripper of a player if you're scoring 200 points. Come on, Bevo, do us a favour, play Dunkley in the guts. Now I will discuss the second tier players, the players that I believe have the potential to average between 95 to 105 points. There are 7 players in this list, so it's a bit bigger compared to the elite. I think we need to tread carefully on who we select from this category. So the players I have here are Dustin Martin, Steele Sidebottom, Hawkins, Zach Butters, Michael Walters, Dane Zorko, and Isaac Heaney. So we'll start off with Tom Hawkins, who's listed at 568,600, which is bloody expensive for a key forward. But he had a good year last year, and I think he was the second highest scoring forward. So do we consider him at the age of 32 and with the addition of Jerry Cameron? I don't think so. But he does have low ownership numbers. He'll probably be owned by less than 2% of fantasy owners this year. And due to that alone, he comes back into consideration for me. He's been really good over the last 2 seasons, and he averaged 106 points last year, which is pretty incredible. This year, I can still see him moving backwards, not forwards, due to his age, Cameron, and just, I don't think he can reach the heights like he did in 2020. So he's more of an average around 100 for me, maximum. He's only ever averaged over 100 twice in his career. Twice. So he's a risk for me. So I won't be starting him, but I can see why people would. Next up is Steel Sidebottom from the Collingwood Magpies. Rusty! 588,000. Expensive? Yes. Gun player? Yes. Ball winner? Yes. But he's an interesting one. He's shown that he can be a reliable scorer and he can be a fairly big scorer too. And he's shown that in the past. Excluding 2020 due to only playing 9 matches, over the past 5 years, he has averaged 95, 101, 96, 106, and 104. Now that's consistent and that's a premium status for me. I believe that if he can average around that mark again, he will be in the top 5 to 6 forwards by the end of the year. However, he's overpriced, but I think the money can be spent elsewhere and you'll get better results. For instance, you can spend that money on maybe a premium midfielder, such as Treloar or Taylor Adams, Mitch Duncan even, or someone like a Walsh or Rao, who are even cheaper or around the same mark as Steele, but do have the potential to score more. Or you could look at Raul Marshall and Josh Dunkley. Both are cheaper than Sidebottom, and I guarantee both those players will average more by season's end than Sidebottom. So he's a question mark for me. Next up, the man himself. They call him Norm. Or they call him Dustin Martin, either, both suit. He'll be a very high ownership player as always, and he'll only average around 100 like he has the past 2 seasons. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I'm not a huge fan of Martin in my Supercoach team. I think he's overrated in that aspect of the game. He's one of the best in the competition, but for Supercoach, he's just too inconsistent for me. He just doesn't score highly enough regularly, so no. Next, Zach Butters. He's the next best option behind Sidebottom for me. In my previous video, I go through a bit on why I think Zach Butters will take the next step this year. So he averaged 87 in 2020, but I believe he now has the potential to average somewhere around 100. He will reach that average. It just depends. Is it this year? Is it next year? He's a tick for me, and he'll have low ownership as well. I don't think anyone will even be considering him or will be willing to take the risk on him. So he's a tick for me, but he's also a question mark. Do I have the balls to pick him? I think he has more potential than anyone in the forward line to get to that 100 average that we're all searching for. So it'll be a late decision for me. We'll see how the rest of my team structures up, but I definitely like him very much. Next up is Michael Walters. So Walters is 531,300. He's had some averages in the high 90s over the past couple of years, which is pretty good, but he's frustrating and he's a little inconsistent for me. Well, I had him 1 year, and you know those never again players that you consider and think of throughout the year that you never get them again. Well, he's one of them. Just off that, he'll be a no for me as well. They've got a stacked midfield down there at Freo, and he is damaging forward centre, so I think they'll play Sonny Walters more forward than midfield this year, which will impact his average and potential to score high. So he's also had a delayed start to the preseason, so like I said before, it's not what I'm about, so he's a no. And here we go, Mr. Potential, Isaac Heaney. He's averaged around 95 4 consecutive years. I've had him every year, hoping that he gets over 100, somewhere between 105 to 110. But he's just a yo-yo scorer. He doesn't play enough midfield minutes. He spends most of the time in the forward half. Because he's so good overhead and he does have the ability to hit the scoreboard, you've got to play him there, I think, as well. I understand why he does spend a lot more time forward than through the midfield. Maybe 1 year he'll get extended midfield minutes, and then maybe I'll consider him. He only had 9 hundreds in 2019 and scored over 100 twice out of 6 games in 2020. So that's a below 50% strike rate. That's not good enough. He is well priced this year due to only 6 games in 2020, but you'll find around that price throughout the year anyway. And if it looks like he's going to tear the competition apart this year, then you can jump on board, because I guarantee you will find Heaney at the same price, or if not cheaper, throughout the season. This is the next best, the players between 80 and 95 points. I have 5 players in this category, that being Chad Wingard from Hawthorn, Shai Bolton, Toby Green, Zach Bailey from Brisbane, and Tommy Phillips, who's just been traded from Collingwood to the Hawthorn Hawks. Now we'll start with Wingard. Wingard has shown that he can score quickly and highly when he gets extended midfield minutes. But the reality is, he's just too good up forward and the Hawks need some goal kicking power. He'll spend too much time in the forward 50 to be relevant. He'll hover around the 80 to 95 as he usually does. Probably not enough for me to pick him. And also, he's never averaged over 100 points in his career. So he's not really screaming, pick me, pick me. So I won't. Next up, Toby Green. Love Toby Green. Same story as Wingard though. He's a great player, spends too much time up forward, limiting his scoring potential. Cross. Now the next three are interesting. We have Shai Bolton, Zach Bailey and Tom Phillips. All intriguing picks. I believe Tommy Phillips will own the wing at Hawthorn, and it wouldn't surprise me if he averaged around 90 to 95. He's done it before and I think he can do it again. He's a pretty good price. He's 25 years of age. He's a ball winner and he can hit the scoreboard. He just needs to clean up his disposal. If he does that, I can definitely see him averaging around 90 to 95, and at his price that's pretty good value, so I can understand why people would pick him, and I may start with him but I may not very convincing. Anyway, Shai Bolton is the next on the list. He was fantastic in 2020, but I just can't see him averaging quite enough to pick him. He did average 87 last year, which is a pretty big jump from the previous year, and he played throughout the midfield. So he's definitely on the way up, and if he comes out and averages somewhere around 100, it wouldn't surprise me at all. So keep a very close eye on him, especially throughout the preseason games. If he spends most of those games at centre bounces and not inside 50, I may just pick him as well. I'll have to see his ownership numbers. I think a few fantasy owners have started to catch on to Bolton, so we'll just keep a close eye on him. And next up is Zach Bailey. He's probably the most interesting one of the three here that I've listed. When he plays through the midfield or across half back, he just offers the Lions a lot of speed and versatility. So he's a pretty damaging player. He's pretty good by foot, but he can just break through packs and he opens up the game as well. So he posted some really good scores in a row in 2020, and between the rounds of 8 to 13, he averaged 98 points. Then he was thrown around a bit, playing around half forward and then sometimes through the midfield, but it's just, where is he going to play in 2021? If he's likely to get more midfield minutes, or if he plays most of his footy across half back, then I reckon he can break out. 420,000, so he's probably just a little bit pricey. I'd nearly prefer the Phillips pick at $20,000 cheaper. I think Bailey will surprise a lot of people this year, and I think he can come out and post a really good average. And another thing to look at here is that he increased his average by 30 points from the year before. And that's a big jump. Even if he only increases his average by a further 10 to 12 points this year, that makes him a top 6 forward nearly. Another one to keep a close eye on as well. Now we have the value picks. I have 3 players in this category. One being Ben Brown, the second being Jack Siebel, and the third, my favourite, Jarman Impey. If I could rank the 3 of these, I'd go Impey, Siebel, depending on what role he plays this year, and then Brown. So if Impey plays across half back, he has shown, especially last year and the year before that, that he can score pretty well and he can average high 80s. So at 212,000, that's rookie price. And if you're getting 80s from Impey, you've got to pick him. If he plays half forward, he's a no-no. Now Siebel, if he plays forward, he's a possibly pick. He has averaged between 85 and 95 pretty much every year throughout his career, so I can see him doing that again. But there's been talk about him being pushed to half back, which is, I'm not sure. I'm a bit uncertain on how that works out for North at the moment, but maybe they can't fit him in the midfield anymore. They've got too much forward power with Curtis Taylor and Taron Thomas and Taylor Gardner, so he doesn't really fit anywhere, so throw him back. He's got good leadership qualities. Maybe he can show us something different down there. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll find out. Ben Brown, the next one at 260,300. Now that's a pretty good price of Brown as well, and he has potential to average around 75 to 80. And if you're averaging around that at 260,000, he is going to rise in value pretty quickly to around 400 plus. So being the number 1 forward at Melbourne now, he will get a lot of attention, but it wouldn't surprise me if he jumps out of the blocks and posts a few hundred scores in a row. But at 260,000, I prefer Jarman at 212,800. We also have to keep in mind and think about our structure and how we want to set up our team this year. So this is very important. I tend to lean towards 3 premium forwards and rookies, or either 2 premiums, one mid-price, and then the rest rookie. But because I'm so unsure on some forward rookies at the moment, I do believe there is value around, like I said before, with Impey at 202,000, Zeeble at 257,000, and Brown at 260. If none of the forward rookies get selected, then we do have a fallback option. It may be a bit pricier, but they probably will average more than those rookies anyway. So they could be value picks, and they're more likely to play more games than those rookies. There's nothing worse than selecting rookies who play 3 to 5 games, leave the team for 6 weeks, and aren't returned until round 14. At least we know with Brown, Zeeble, and Impey, most of them are likely to be starting 22 every week. But for what I'll be doing now, I will be heading into the season with 2 premiums and 1 mid-pricer. I'll use the leftover cash to spend on a consistent scoring defender probably, such as Caleb Daniel or maybe Lockie Whitfield. Maybe I'll spend it on a midfielder such as Adam Treloar, Taylor Adams, Sam Walsh, Rowley, or Patrick Cripps, who is very underpriced, but he will be a heavily owned player this year. So for now, this is what I'm set up with. I've got F1 of Josh Dunkley, F2, Rowan Marshall, F3, Jarman Impey, a little bit of surprise, and then the next 3 spots will be rookies. So I've got Archie Perkins from the Bombers, who I think will debut round 1, or if not early in the season. My boy Eli Smith, the contested bull down there at Brisbane. Hopefully he gets some game time early on in the season. And then James Rowe from Adelaide. We'll see how the rookies pan out, but that's how I'm heading into the season at this present time. Now, I know this video has been a bit longer than expected, and I tried to be as direct and informative with my decisions as possible. I hope you enjoyed the reasons on why these players will or will not make my team this year, and hopefully you learned something positive from it. Let us know in the comments on what you'll be doing, or if you have any advice for me on what I should be considering as well. I'm always up to hearing other people's opinions, and that's what makes the community and discussion so good. As always, it's been a pleasure. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment in the section below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers.